I wanted to talk a little bit more about cerebral palsy, what it is, and maybe some little tidbits that you may not know about the disability. According to worldcpday.com, cerebral palsy is a physical disability that affects movement and posture. And if this sounds like a very broad description, that is because cerebral palsy is more like an umbrella term. So when you think about an umbrella, there are things that cover this. This is CP, and there's a lot of things underneath that is covered on this term. CP basically refers to, more often than not, a brain injury. And while the brain injury itself will not get any worse, there are other complications that come along with the disability in regards to, the type that you may have or how severe your CP may be. There are two different ways you can talk about cerebral palsy. You can talk about the type of cerebral palsy, and this has to do with the place in the brain that was mostly affected or injured in some way. That means the manifestation of the cerebral palsy will look a little bit different, as well as where on the body that the person is affected. For me, I have what's known as spastic hemiplegia or hemiplegia. That's the bad thing about always reading words and never actually having to pronounce them in front of people, is because when you try to pronounce something you've always read, you're not really sure if you're pronouncing it right. Doesn't make you wrong, it just means you read a lot. So the more you know. Spastic hemiplegia the spastic refers to the type of cerebral palsy that I have. Hemiplegia refers to where on my body I'm mostly affected, and this is my right side, my right arm, hand, hip, leg, and foot. Spastic cerebral palsy refers to spasticity in the muscles. How I like to tell other people about it is like if you clench your fist and you're like rah, and then you never unclench. So think about when you're flexing your muscles, just imagine you never not being able to unflex them or at least unflex them all the way. That is kind of what spasticity feels like to me. So my range of motion, particularly in my hip, my leg, and my foot, will be compromised, as well as just very stiff, very tight muscles. While my hand, I do have range of motion that's almost comparable to what you would see in a more able-bodied person. I do suffer from uncoordination as well as weakness of my right side just in general, but I'm mostly affected in my hip, my leg, and my foot. I guess the biggest thing would be the fact that when I was growing up, I went through intensive physical therapy 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week, just to try to do things like learn how to walk fluidly, as fluidly as I possibly could. I was so stiff, I walk completely on my toes. So I was fitted with 2 leg braces, and I've also had a hip surgery to try to alleviate some of that spasticity and make me more even in my gait. As I'm getting older, I'm finding I'm having more and more sort of little things crop up that I wasn't really aware of before. But that's for another time in another video. But the other type of cerebral palsy is what's known as ataxic cerebral palsy, and this has to do with very shaky movements, you have difficulty positioning yourself in space, trying to get your brain and your muscles to coordinate to put your foot down, for example, or to reach for something. Whereas dyskinetic cerebral palsy has to do with a lot of involuntary movements. So you may move without wanting to. I don't know as much about the other two, so I can only really talk about what my lived experience as somebody with spastic cerebral palsy is. But I can link some information down below. And you can also have a mix of these two, of all of these. The other way to describe cerebral palsy is where on your body is the person affected. Quadriplegia cerebral palsy, quad meaning four, plegia some sort of paralysis. This is your four limbs being affected. Oftentimes your face and your mouth muscles will also be affected, which may cause speech difficulties. We have diplegia, so di meaning two. So this often refers to both legs and maybe part of your trunk being affected as well. And then hemiplegia, which is the kind that I have, it kind of cuts you, down the middle. It's usually an arm and a leg that are affected in varying degrees on the same side. So for me, it's my right side. I am by no means an expert, like I said, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about my cerebral palsy, and I am also going to insert a clip of me walking, and I'm going to show you two different ways of walking. I'm going to show you the way I walk when I am 100% focused on, yes, let me try to walk as able-bodied as possible. That is me making a very conscious effort to not only move my feet properly and my legs properly, but also putting my arm down and swinging my arm properly. And then I will also show you when I'm not at my best, or when I'm not focusing, or if I'm thinking about something else, besides walking, besides the physical act of walking, I'll show you what that looks like too. And I feel like it's a little bit more indicative of what a CP walk might look like for those of us who may have a similar type of CP that I do. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something more about cerebral palsy that you may not have known before. And if you have any questions for me, I will do my best to answer y'all. I am still learning about cerebral palsy. It's just been within the past few years that I've been trying to learn more and more about cerebral palsy. So I will do my best to answer you if I can. And if you like what you saw, please subscribe, and I will see y'all later. Bye.